No one believes you in this room. We have national reporters in this room, and I doubt very much that they believe you, because your story is so fantastic, it's simply worthy of unbelief.
Welcome back to Northern Perspective, everyone. I'm Cypher.
And I'm Fox. Today, the Globe and Mail dropped a bombshell story about new revelations regarding the investigation of the ArriveCan scandal. It sounds like real consequences are actually happening to some of the senior public officials, Cameron McDonald and Tony Utano.
Let's just get right into it, shall we? 2 federal officials suspended without pay over contract misconduct allegations. The federal government has suspended an assistant deputy minister and a director general, both without pay, in connection with allegations of misconduct in the awarding of federal contract work, a move the 2 senior officials say is an intimidation effort aimed at silencing their criticism. Cameron McDonald, an assistant deputy minister at Health Canada, describes the reprisals against him and Antonio Utano as Kafkaesque madness in a strongly worded letter to the House of Commons Committee on Government Operations.
Mr. McDonald and Mr. Utano, a Director General at the Canada Revenue Agency, previously worked together at the Canada Border Services Agency. Their names regularly appeared on CBSA contracting documents related to outsourcing work on the ArriveCan app for cross-border travelers. They were also both connected to another CBSA outsourcing project involving a Montreal software company named Botler.
The House Committee is looking into how the cost of the ArriveCan app grew to in excess of $54 million. It is also looking at the growing cost of federal outsourcing in general, and Botler's concerns that the government's use of layers of subcontracting is not a prudent use of taxpayer dollars. As the Globe first reported in October 2023, Botler co-founders Ritika Dutt and Amir Morv brought forward allegations of contracting misconduct to Mr. Utano and others in 2021, and then to more senior CBSA leaders in November 2022. After receiving that more detailed package of allegations, the CBSA leadership launched an internal investigation and also referred the matter to the RCMP, which is also investigating.
Botler's November 2022 report expressed concerns about cozy ties and apparent favoritism in the government's use of private IT consultants. Specifically, they questioned why the CBSA did not hire Botler directly for their work. Instead, Mr. McDonald urged them in a February 2020 recorded phone call to, quote, please work with Christian, end quote, and, quote, let Christian work his magic, end quote, in reference to GC Strategies managing partner Christian Firth. Botler also questioned why their work was obtained through layers of subcontracting with various IT staffing firms and alleged that their work experience had been inflated by others in forms submitted to the government.
Mr. Firth also urged the 2 Botler entrepreneurs to single out Mr. McDonald for praise when meeting with other senior government officials. Quote, I just want to make sure that he gets taken care of, right? End quote, Mr. Firth told Ms. Dutt and Mr. Morv in a December 11, 2019 recorded conversation. After the Globe's reporting, Mr. Firth told MPs in a November 2nd appearance that he had altered the resumes and work experience of the 2 Botler co-founders in contracting grids. He called it an unintentional and regrettable mistake.
One area that you have been presented with, sir, that gives me great discomfort as a parliamentarian is the issue regarding resumes. And quite frankly, sir, whether you call it a mistake, whether you call it a lack of intent, whether you refer to it as an embellishment, in my respectful submission, sir, that is a lie. And no one believes you. No one believes you in this room. We have national reporters in this room, and I doubt very much that they believe you, because your story is so fantastic, it's simply worthy of unbelief. You, sir, at all material times only received one version of the CV from both Ritika Dutt and Mr. Amir Moravej. One CV, one resume. That was not ambiguous, that was not confusing, and you took it upon yourself to manipulate both of those resumes to ensure that Botler qualified for government funding. You did that without the express permission or consent of both Botler's executives, and in so doing, sir, you have committed a serious criminal offense. Do you have anything to say about that, or are you going to continue on this line that I made a mistake?
Yeah, I'm going to tell the truth, and it was a genuine mistake because there are multiple versions of the resume. They may have given me one, but as a recruiter, you make different versions of resumes, and the wrong one was sent through.
Sir, who made multiple versions? You or somebody else?
I did.
When asked during that appearance about his relationship with Mr. MacDonald, Mr. Firth originally told MPs he did not know whether Mr. MacDonald had a cottage. A Conservative MP later asked him whether he would like to reflect on that answer. Quote, "Yes, Mr. MacDonald has never referred to it as a cottage. It's a chalet," end quote, Mr. Firth told the Government Operations Committee.
Mr. Firth, I'm sure that the millions of Canadians who either are watching this or will learn about this in the press or seek out the transcript of this particular meeting will be very, very grateful that the RCMP has access to this particular evidence. What I can understand is why you would take active steps in misleading this particular committee and Canadians with respect to your role as it relates to fraud and forgery with respect to modifying without permission and consent these transcripts, but the resumes to the government. What I can't understand is why you would deliberately lie to this committee on a very innocent question that was put to you by my colleague, Mr. Barrett, when he asked you if you knew whether or not Mr. Cameron MacDonald from the CBSA had a cottage. And you said no. Do you want to reflect on that answer?
Yeah, Mr. MacDonald has never referred to it as a cottage. It's a chalet. It's not a cottage.
For that clarification, Mr. Firth.
French is so useful.
Are you kidding me?
Mr. MacDonald later provided dramatic testimony to the committee on a November 7th appearance alongside Mr. Utano, during which they denied any wrongdoing. Mr. MacDonald accused former CBSA Vice President Min Doan, who is now the Chief Information Officer for the Government of Canada, of lying to MPs about how Mr. Firth's two-person IT staffing company, GC Strategies, was selected to work on the ArriveCan app.
GC Strategies clearly got a very good deal here, so it really matters in terms of getting to the bottom of this, who made the decision to hire GC Strategies. Now, I understood in your opening statement, both of you said that Min Doan was responsible for that decision. Was my understanding correct? You're both nodding.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Mr. Doan very clearly and very explicitly testified before this committee when he appeared on October 24th that they were investigating who, trying to find out who, and to his knowledge, they weren't aware who. So, to be clear, based on your testimony, Mr. Doan was lying when he appeared before the committee.
I don't understand, Mr. Chair and honorable members, how they could be investigating for a year who made the decision on ArriveCan. It's quite clear, and if they had asked anybody on our team, they would have said the same thing.
Mr. MacDonald also said Mr. Doan had threatened him, a claim Mr. Doan later denied. Mr. MacDonald had been invited back to the Government Operations Committee. His letter to the House Committee, which was obtained by the Globe, requests more time to appear and updates MPs on events since their last appearance.
You sort of implied that Mr. Doan wanted to make you the fall guy for what happened here. Would that be a a correct interpretation of your version of events, that he made a decision and that someone somewhere decided that you two were going to be the ones made to wear this, and therefore not supported by the department and made to appear responsible for the decision? Is that your version of events?
Yes, Mr. Chair. I felt incredibly threatened on that phone call with Mindone on October the 28th. I talked to my old supervisor and then my boss on Monday and Tuesday morning following that. I think Mr. Utano can tell you that he had a very similar experience with Mr. Doan as well.
According to Mr. McDonald's January 10th letter to the committee, the CBSA had been covering their legal fees, but this has now ended and their security clearances have been revoked. Now, this is something that we're actually going to be going back to the testimony of Cameron McDonald, not to corroborate what was in the Globe and Mail article this morning, but to illustrate that there's actually a difference.
So to both Mr. McDonald and Mr. Utano, although you've not been sworn to tell the truth, when you attend committee, part of parliamentary privilege, there's a component that you are required to tell the truth. You are required to give us fulsome answers. So I just wanted to put that on the record because I know you have legal counsel present. Both of you have independent legal counsel, is that correct?
We have legal counsel.
Yes. Is it from the DOJ or is it private counsel?
We weren't provided with any support from the federal government when this happened whatsoever, so we had to go get our own support.
So in McDonald's letter on January 10th to the committee, he says the CBSA has been covering their legal fees.
So how is that not being provided with any support whatsoever from the government?
Last time I checked, the CBSA was a federal agency, which is part of the federal government.
Right, and they're paying for the lawyer for these guys.
Which means, everybody, you're paying. You're paying for the lawyers for these guys. Taxpayer money. Whether you're a conservative, a liberal, or an NDP voter, you are paying for the lawyers for these guys, at least up until recently. So that was another lie back in committee in November 7th. Gee, I wonder why this guy was suspended without pay.
Could it be the lies upon lies upon lies?
Maybe. Let's continue.
Chris Spiteri, a lawyer representing Mr. McDonald and Mr. Utano, confirmed in an email Monday that both men have been suspended without pay. Quote, in light of the recent action taken, which we believe are punitive and aimed at damaging their credibility, it appears that efforts are being made to fabricate a case for terminating their employment altogether, end quote, Mr. Spiteri wrote. He said he and his clients believe that the punitive measures are being taken to, quote, tarnish the reputation and credibility of Mr. McDonald and Mr. Utano in order to undermine their honest testimony, which exposed misinterpretations made to parliamentarians by senior government officials, end quote. He also said the action sent a chilling message to the broader public service.
Quote, we are not familiar with such extreme measures being taken against civil servants in the past, end quote, he said. Quote, it sends a chilling message to the entire civil service, discouraging others from speaking truthfully about any misconduct by their superiors, end quote. Former Privy Council clerk Michael Wernick said the public finger-pointing by senior public servants is highly unusual. Quote, I cannot recall any other instance of such public disagreement. It is an outlier, end quote, he said. Suspensions without pay are also rare, he said.
Quote, it is a very strong measure to suspend without pay while a process is underway and no conclusions have been reached. Usually, disciplinary measures follow an investigation being completed, and suspension with pay is more common in the early stages, end quote, he said. Quote, it is also a very strong measure to suspend or permanently revoke a security clearance. It is tantamount to removing someone from that job and any other job that requires that level of clearance. It is not a common occurrence, end quote.
In his letter to committee, Mr. McDonald says he and Mr. Utano are facing, quote, a rubric of false accusations, cover-up, and scapegoating, end quote, and have not been presented with clear evidence of wrongdoing. Quote, the CBSA internal investigation is being conducted in a remarkably unusual manner. To this day, and despite several attempts, Mr. Utano and I have not been presented with anything other than bald accusations of wrongdoing. No specifics of any allegations, no details, and no evidence have been presented to us. Instead, we have received threats that if we don't participate in the investigation, that a decision will still be made without our input, and that, quote, it is in our best interest to participate, end quote, he wrote.
Quote, to this day, Mr. Utano and I do not know what we are accused of. This Kafkaesque madness is damaging to our health, our professional reputations, our careers, and our families, end quote, he wrote. Quote, this campaign of intimidation, retaliation, attempts to muzzle and scapegoat us is offensive, shameful, and brings Canada's federal civil service into disrepute, end quote. Spokespeople for the CBSA, Health Canada, and the Canada Revenue Agency all declined to respond directly with respect to Mr. McDonald and Mr. Utano's employment status, citing federal privacy laws.
Quote, we can confirm that any allegations or suspicions of employee misconduct are taken seriously and are thoroughly investigated. When unfavorable information about an employee comes to the CRA's attention, the CRA reviews it in the context of whether the employee can still reliably perform their assigned duties, end quote, said CRA spokesperson Sylvie Branch. CBSA spokesperson Guillaume Berube said the investigation into Botler's allegations is continuing.
Health Canada spokesperson Corey Gregory also said she could not comment on specific employees. Quote, at all times, we expect our employees to abide by Health Canada's Code of Conduct and the Values and Ethics Code for the public sector. The department takes any allegations of misconduct seriously and thoroughly investigates any information brought to our attention, end quote, she said. The committee's hearings will resume this week. Vaughn Brennan, a consultant who worked with Botler and GC Strategies, is scheduled to appear on Wednesday, that's tomorrow. On Thursday, MPs are scheduled to hear again from current CBSA President Erin O'Gorman and former CBSA President John Ospowski.
So that's what dropped today, folks.
This is extremely significant. One of the things that sticks out to me the most is this quote, that it is a very strong measure to suspend without pay while a process is underway and no conclusions have been reached. And then furthermore, that it is also a very strong measure to suspend or permanently revoke a security clearance.
What this essentially means, everybody, is that someone is doing an investigation within the government and they found something. They found something significant enough to suspend an assistant deputy minister and a director general. And not only suspend them without pay and revoke their security clearance. I completely agree with the lawyer when they said it sounds like they're getting ready to terminate. Yes, this is what usually happens.
This is significant. This is huge. We can't even overstate how big this is because it is just gigantic. Again, they've mentioned in the article that normally for the public service, if something suspicious is going on, they'll suspend them, but they'll suspend them with pay. So it's basically kind of a paid vacation, to be honest. The fact that these two gentlemen have been suspended without pay and security clearances have been revoked is gigantic.
Well, and here's the thing. Cameron McDonald is assuming that this is as a result of the internal CBSA investigation. But remember, the RCMP is also investigating this. And remember that Ratika and Amir on the live stream the other day said that it's giving them hope. Well, to me, I don't think this came from the CBSA investigation. What I think happened is the investigators that are actively involved in this on the RCMP found potential evidence of criminality, advised the appropriate people within the government that we have information here, we have evidence here, you probably don't want these guys working there anymore. This would explain why McDonald and Utano have not been provided any evidence yet, because that is part of this investigation. So while this investigation continues, these guys are not getting paid our taxpayer money. Hooray.
That's a win for us, folks.
And they're being made to sweat. Like Botler has been made to sweat for the last 2 years. Botler hasn't been paid the full amount. Less than half of what they were initially promised has been paid to them. So,
And as you've heard in our live stream from Sunday night, that unfortunately they will not be able to do work with the government of Canada going forward. So any contracts that may have been in the pipeline, they're gone.
So, it looks really good on Utano and McDonald. Now, some people, I don't know who, may be saying, well, what if these guys are telling the truth? Well, these guys have already been proven to lie on multiple occasions. And remember what we said during the Christian Firth testimony is that if you lie about one thing, if you get caught, it undermines your entire credibility of everything else that you've said.
Well, yeah, and then you have this ridiculous hill to die on, like the cottage versus chalet thing, because you know that if you get caught in that lie, then your whole credibility for the entire testimony and previous testimonies is going to be called into question.
Right. If you're willing to lie in something so insignificant as the label of a residence, it just opens the door for you to lie on things that are 10 times more important than that. So we continue. And this is giving us a lot of hope that actual consequences are going to be coming. And again, this is scratching the surface, people. This is, although we're talking about an assistant deputy minister and a director general, in terms of the scope of the government, these guys aren't near the top here. There's people above them that they're involved in this. They know what has gone on. So it's going to be interesting to see how this unfolds. And based on this article from the Globe and Mail, one other very key thing was outlined here, and it's easy to miss. It's that Cameron McDonald wrote a letter to committee a week ago, and he is losing his mind. He is just coming apart at the seams, and you got to wonder, how long is it going to be before he starts ratting other people out? Because it's obvious he's going down. And I think he went into that first committee meeting with Utano with the agenda, we're going to stop this and we're going to make sure that nothing sticks to us and everything sticks to Mindone. Now, Mindone has his own problems because his testimony in his second appearance at committee was absolutely atrocious. So it's not as if one person's lying, meaning the other person's telling the truth. I think both of these guys have a part in this, and both of them are lying, just in different ways. So what's next? As the article said, Von Brennan, who is this mysterious project manager that was assigned to Botler, and Botler ended up having to pay, despite the fact that they were told that the CBSA would be paying them. So they paid Von Brennan out of their own pocket, and he basically did diddly squat during this whole project.
Yeah, he sat around, did nothing, and took the money and ran from what we can tell.
Right, and now Botler was stuck with the tab. That wasn't taxpayer money, that was Botler's money. So he originally was called to testify tomorrow for 1 hour. That has been increased to 2. And I think we now know why the current president and former president of the CBSA are testifying on Thursday, because I'm pretty sure committee would like to know, why was taxpayer money used to pay for the legal counsel of these two guys while they were being investigated by the government? You essentially have the government providing legal counsel for government employees while the government is investigating those government employees. If that doesn't smell like something's off, I don't know what does. So Thursday should be pretty dramatic, and we're looking forward to walking you through this and getting to the bottom of it.
So the schedule going forward will be Wednesday, January 17th. We're going to have a live stream at 9 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time, where we will be reacting well, it'll be live for us, but we'll be reacting to the testimony in committee earlier in the day. We're going to do the exact same thing on Thursday at 9:00 p.m. Eastern Time, where we'll be reacting live in our real time to testimony that happened earlier on Thursday.
So get your popcorn, everybody. We ended up having some laughs and some good times as we got to the bottom of this in our previous ArriveCan live streams. And, you know, the fact that they're meeting before Parliament sits just illustrates the urgency of this, and the timing of this as we head into the spring couldn't be better.